Hey everybody, welcome to PC Perspective. We have an exciting video for you today. Today we're looking at the Samsung U28D590D monitor. And what's unique about this is that it is a 4K panel. It's a 28-inch 3840 by 2160 resolution screen. It has a 60 Hz refresh rate through a single stream. We'll talk about that in a second. It has a 1000:1 contrast ratio, a 1 millisecond gray to gray response time rating, and like I said, 4K at a pretty deep discount compared to what we saw last year. Now it is a TN monitor, and for a lot of you that will be an immediate turnoff. I will say that this TN panel looks better than most of the TN monitors that I've used or been exposed to in the past. It still has some viewing angle issues. You still get some color shifting when you view it at more extreme horizontal or even vertical viewing angles. In our testing, the vertical viewing angles actually were the most apparent and obvious, and the stand actually comes into a part with that as well. So, you know, this is not an IPS display, this is not an IGZO display, it is a TN panel, but it's a little bit better than any TN panel that you may have seen before. Now, if we look at physical traits, the bezel around this is actually pretty shiny, which I think is a little bit of a downside. The screen itself is kind of a semi-matte finish, which I actually prefer quite a bit. The stand is okay. It has angle adjustment, tilt forward and backward, but not to any it's not very dramatic. You can't tilt it back or forward very far. It does not have any height adjustment, and the monitor does not have any VESA mount on it, which means you cannot put a different stand on it, so you're kind of stuck with what you have here, which is a little bit disappointing. It has some unique features. It has picture-in-picture, picture-by-picture. You can actually do picture by picture. Both sides can do 1920 by 1080 or 1920 by 2160. One can use DisplayPort, one can use HDMI, or they can use two HDMI inputs for that. Kind of interesting if you're going to use two different systems on the same monitor, you can do that. Another option is the picture-in-picture, which actually will let you do a full 1920 by 1080p unscaled image in one of the portions of the monitor. So if you ever watch TV or need a secondary system input into your display, you can do that very easily. And you can move it around the screen, you can scale it to be a little bit smaller, or you can leave it in native resolution. But it's pretty interesting if you're used to having, like a window up viewing TV or videos anyway. It's kind of a more natural, better looking, higher quality version of doing something like that. And both those features seem to work pretty well. Installation on this is actually much easier than on previous 4K panels. And by installation, I simply mean connectivity, quality, and just like ease of use of installation. This is a single stream, single tile monitor. And essentially that means you have one scaler inside the monitor that can handle 3840 by 2160 at 60 Hertz. Last year's panels, like the Asus PQ321Q or the Sharp monitor, required two scalers, and that resulted in some driver issues, some kind of compatibility issues with certain video cards, where it actually would show up as two independent monitors. You either had to use Infinity or the driver had to be specifically coded in order to recognize that as a single panel. With this monitor and some of the other monitors coming out this summer, that is a thing of the past. You plug it in to the DisplayPort connection. As long as your graphics card and system supports DisplayPort 1.2, it will show up as a 3840 by 2160 monitor and work at 60 Hertz right out of the box. That's a huge improvement over what we had last year. In terms of usage scenarios, there's really three types of users that are looking at 4K monitors today. You have your productivity user, your gamer, and your creative professional. From a productivity standpoint, you get a huge amount of pixels with this display. 3840 by 2160 will give you a lot of Excel room, or if you're doing like day trading or something like that, you have tons of real estate on the screen. The problem, of course, is that your pixels are going to be very small. If you use Windows 8 or 8.1 to adjust the scaling rate up to like 150%, which I think is actually preferred for this monitor, you lose some of that real estate, but you keep the crispness and sharpness of the text. So that's one positive and negative for a kind of a productivity user. For gaming, nothing's going to beat running games like Metro Last Light at 3840 by 2160. The problem, of course, is you need a lot of GPU horsepower to do that. You're going to need at least a GTX 780 Ti or an R9 290, 290X graphics card for that, and maybe even multiples of those. So you're going to have to invest quite a bit in your GPU configuration if you want to run at 3840 by 2160 at 60 frames per second or above. If you can't do that, you can run this at 1920 by 1080 or 25 by 14, and it scales fairly well. And in game, you won't really notice, kind of any fuzziness or pixelating issues there. And it will be able to run at those resolutions if you, don't have the GPU horsepower now, but you plan on having that GPU horsepower later. And there's really, really nothing cooler than playing Crysis or Metro or BioShock at 4K. These are awesome gaming experiences. For the creative professional, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag, right? The TN panel is going to be an automatic turnoff. The somewhat questionable viewing angles are going to be an issue. For a gamer, it's not really that big of a deal. You're going to be centered. You're always going to kind of be looking at the middle of the monitor anyway. For a professional setting, if you move around the office a lot, or there's maybe somebody, two people collaborating on a project, if there's somebody looking over your shoulder, they're going to see slightly color shifted pixels, and there's really no way to get around that. So if super perfect color reproduction is necessary for your workload, I don't think this is going to work. But it could be a complementary piece. You can get a ton of things done if you're doing video editing or photo editing, and get all kinds of different images and tools in the real estate that this screen provides. So mixed bag on that regard. What's not a mixed bag is the price. You'll be able to find this monitor for about $699. It's already for sale. You find that at Amazon or Newegg or NCIX or numerous other places. It will range anywhere from $50 below that or above that, depending on what is in stock and when you happen to look. At $699, that's a third or a quarter of the price of the monitors of last year. The Asus PQ321Q still sells for $2,400. Now, it's not a TN panel, it's an IGZO panel. It's quite a bit better image quality in terms of viewing angles, but it's $2,400. If you look at other options, Asus has announced a 28-inch TN Plus or TN-based 4K panel as well that will likely use a single scaler option. Its expected MSRP is $649, so fairly close to what you see here. And if you look at 25 by 14 monitors, those 27-inch WQHD displays, you're going to look at $300 to $500 for one of those, depending on what image qualities you're looking for. If you want IPS panels or whatever you happen to get with that. So $699 is still expensive for a monitor. No getting around that. It definitely is, but it's so much less expensive than the 4K panels that work at 60 hertz. That's the key here. That work at 60 hertz than last year, that we can't help but be impressed by the value it offers. If you're a gamer or a productivity user and you are kind of comfortable with not having perfect viewing angles and maybe seeing a little bit of color shift if you view the monitor off axis, then I think the Samsung U28D590D is going to be an awesome option for you guys. Check out the full review at PCPro.com. We've got more pics and information and details on it there. And otherwise, be sure to subscribe, and thanks for watching.